Hey, Newbie Dan here, and this is a newbie tool tip about counterbores and carriage bolts. Newbie tooltips are short videos that highlight specific tools or techniques. They're not intended to be in-depth reviews or tutorials, and they're not sponsored by anyone. This is a carriage bolt. This particular one is 1/4 inch. A carriage bolt's head is rounded at the top and flat underneath, and it has a square neck right here. When you tighten down the nut, the carriage bolt's square neck gets pulled down into the wood, and this keeps the bolt from spinning as you continue to tighten the nut. It also keeps the bolt from spinning when you remove the nut. You can see here that the square left an indentation where it got pulled down into the wood. The next time you put the bolt in the hole, wiggle the bolt around a little until the square settles into the indentation, and then tighten down the nut. The bolt should stay put and not spin. Of course, all of this depends on what type of wood you use, how thick it is, and how much torque you apply. The wood needs to be strong enough to keep the bolt's square neck from turning. I use carriage bolts with good quality plywood like Baltic birch all the time. I think this is maple. I've even managed to use softwood like pine in a lot of situations. One material not to use with carriage bolts is MDF. It's just not strong enough, at least it hasn't been for me. See? Learn from my mistakes. Carriage bolts are great for places where you can't reach the head of the bolt, like my overhead camera dolly. They're also especially useful for things that have a knob, like this clamp. You can spin the knob and tighten the clamp without having to worry about the bolt turning. Sometimes you want the carriage bolt's head recessed into the wood so it doesn't stick out. That's where counterboring comes into play. In case you don't already know, there's a difference between a countersink and a counterbore. A countersink is shaped like a funnel, and it more or less matches the underside of a typical flathead screw. See my newbie tooltip video on countersink drill bits for more information. There's a link in the description below. A counterbore has a flat bottom, which allows screws or bolts with flat undersides to sit flush against it, sometimes with a washer, with the head recessed below the surface of the wood. Counterbores are great for carriage bolts. To drill a counterbored hole for a carriage bolt, you need 2 bits. The first bit needs to create holes with flat bottoms, like a Forstner bit. If you want more information on Forstner bits, I'll be posting a separate video on them soon. Pick a bit that drills large enough holes for the carriage bolt's head to fit in. Usually I pick a bit at least 1/8 of an inch larger than the bolt's head, just to give me some wiggle room in case I don't get everything drilled perfectly centered. The second bit should be the diameter of the bolt itself, which in this case is 1/4 inch. Drill the counterbore first, using the Forstner bit. If you use a handheld drill, try and keep it as close to 90 degrees as you can. With the handheld drill, I'm having to rock it back and forth a little, but it's possible this bit is dull. Drill down enough so the carriage bolt's head will be below the surface of the wood once the bolt is tightened down. I usually just eyeball it. Here it is again using a drill press. I forgot to set the drill to its slowest speed, so I stop and do that, and then I finish drilling. Don't drill too fast or you could burn the wood, or the bit, like I did with this one. That's probably why it's a little dull. Once you're done drilling the counterbore, switch to the other bit to drill the rest of the way through. You can use the indentation that the Forstner's bit centering spur created to line up the bit and drill through. Once you get the hole drilled, now's the time to put the carriage bolt on and tighten it down to pull the square neck down into the wood. Use a washer and a nut, preferably a fender washer so you don't make an impression on the wood. Tighten down the nut until it pulls the square into the wood. Then you can remove the nut and bolt, and you should have an indentation in the wood like this. So the next time you stick the carriage bolt in the hole and start to tighten it down, you should be able to get the square down into the indentation, and it should hold the bolt in place. And that's all there is to it. Check out the description for links to products seen in this video. Just scroll down, click Show More, and scroll down until you see the links. And if you like what I do here, click that subscribe button. And don't forget to ring that bell to get notified about new videos. Thanks!